So this is the Smart Roof training. It's advanced 3D modeling. And the agenda for today, we're going to go through an introduction, some modeling best practices using the Smart Roof tool and its key functions. For example, the edit mode, unpitching and pitching of roof planes, folds dormers. I'm going to show you how to convert dormers into roofs, why you want to do that, and some more advanced functions like merging of roofs, and I'm sure everyone's questions how to modify those interior lines, those dotted white lines like ridges, hips and valleys, etc. So a little bit about Aurora. Our mission is to help you design and sell better solar, and one of the key tools to accomplish this is the Smart Roof design tool. The Smart Roof design tool took a little over a year to develop, made for both sales and design teams. And just to let you know, we do have a bunch of helpful articles and videos in the Help Center. Just check out help.aurorasolar.com and yeah, take a look. A little bit about myself. My name is Victor. I'm with Aurora Solar for a little over 2 years now. I've been on the customer success team, and I specialize in system design, shading analysis, utility rate structuring. I'm very familiar with the Smart Roof tool. So first off, let's go through some modeling best practices. And some of the things I'm going to mention or show you is how to utilize the street view. We have the map view, which is the angled or oblique view of the location. And we also provide you with different image options. Standard accounts or all accounts get Google and Bing by default. If you purchase credits from us, you can access HD imagery from your map. And of course, everybody can upload their own images. Um, I always recommend allowing 90-degree snaps. And of course, you can expand the image if needed. So let's jump straight into the application. And let's go ahead and show you some of those things. So here we have a simple project, and I'm going to start with simple houses and move on to more and more complicated homes. For this particular one, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the modeling best practices. So we have Street View right over here. If you click on the Street View button at the top, and this is going to give you the ability to look around in Street View. And what you're looking for is taking notes on information about the home. How tall is it? What is the roof shaped like? Where are the vents? Where are the obstructions? Where are the tall trees? Things like that. Now, you'll notice that on the left side, you have your street view. On the right side, you will have this camera here. This camera is to help orientate your street view. So in other words, if you were looking at a different house, this camera will clearly show you that you're looking at the wrong house. So you may want to swivel around so you can take a look at your angle of view. This is what you're looking at in street view. Next to the street view button is the map view. If you click on the map view, you're going to have the ability to take a look at oblique imagery, angled imagery. And once again, you're using this to take a look at the profile of the roof, maybe where the vents and obstructions are, things like that. Now to close off any of these views, just click on the button again. So if you click on the map button again, you will exit out of the you'll exit out of that. Now, if you're working with commercial projects or large projects, you can always click on the blacked out border of the image, and that will enlarge your image. You can, of course, recenter your image by moving this green tile. So if I want to move it up here to this home at the top, I'll go ahead and move the green tile, click on the refresh map button, and it'll recenter to this new location. So I can always move where this image is. A quick note, if you are wondering how am I panning around, there are pan and rotate features down here at the bottom, as well as zooming in and zooming out. A lot of times I will use the hotkeys. You'll find the hotkeys in the parentheses. So the little plus symbol will zoom in, minus symbol will zoom out. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first step you'll want to do is click on the Smartroof tool. When you click on the Smartroof tool, you'll notice that it highlights green to let you know that it's active. Furthermore, you'll see a little menu pop up when you activate the Smartroof tool. So let me deactivate it. You'll see there's no menu up here. When you click on it, you'll see a menu pop up. This menu will give you the option to select a pitched roof or a flat roof. By default, all residential projects will be set to pitched. All commercial projects will be set to flat, but you can of course change it right now. Now I do want a pitched roof in this case, so I'm going to leave it on pitched roof, and I'm going to go ahead and left click. When I left click, it's going to drop one of these nodes down, and you'll see there is a line attached to that node. And I'm going to go ahead and move to the next corner, left click. Now, after you draw your first line, you'll see that all follow-up lines will try to snap to 90 degrees of the previous line. I highly recommend that you allow the snapping to occur. And that would ensure that you drew an accurate drawing. Now, let's say you messed up and you misclicked the first line. You can see that my snaps are really going to be off. You have two options. You can, of course, just finish your drawing following the 90-degree snap and then rotate your image. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Or, if you make a mistake, another option that you have is to hit escape on your keyboard. When you hit escape on your keyboard, this exit your draw mode, giving you the ability to click on this red blotchy shape, and you can delete it, start again. Or another option is if you hit escape, you can click on this unfinished drawing and click on the pencil button at the bottom. This will bring you back into the edit or the draw mode, and while in here, you can go ahead and try and line things up. Once you line it up, you may want to continue the drawing, and the way you do that is just by double left clicking a node, and you can complete the drawing. So pretty much anytime you make a mistake, don't keep left clicking, because that's just going to keep giving you more nodes. Just hit escape and then decide whether you want to start from scratch or if you want to go back and edit this unfinished drawing. Now, another thing that you'll notice is once you start drawing and, you know, um, you'll actually see an expanded menu at the top. And this menu will give you folds and dormers, or options to add them. Just be aware that you can only see this menu at the top when you are in the edit mode or the draw mode of a structure. And a good way to tell if you're in the edit mode or the draw mode is you'll see the menu at the top. You can also click on each individual roof section. I can click on the west face, I can click on the north, the south. I can click on each individual nodes and move them around. I can click on the lines. I can even click on the dotted lines and move them around. Now, to exit the edit or the draw mode, there's a bunch of options. You can always hit escape to exit the mode, and you can see that my menu's gone. You'll also notice that when I try to click on the roof sections, I can't. I actually click on the entire thing, and I'm not able to move the ridge lines at all. When I try to move, it'll move the entire thing. So there's a very important difference when you are in the edit slash draw mode and when you're out of the edit slash draw mode. When you're out of it, what's going to happen is you can click each structure. You can rotate the structure by clicking on the little rotating buttons on the corners. You can move. You can also copy and paste using Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And if you're using a Mac, that's Command C to copy, Command V to paste. You can also delete entire structures by selecting them, hitting delete on your keyboard. Now, what if you want to go back into the edit or draw mode? What you'll do is you'll click on the structure that you want to go back in to edit, and make sure to click on the little pencil button at the bottom. That's going to bring you back in. You'll see the menu at the top again, the folds and dormers. You'll notice you can click on each individual element inside this structure, like the lines, the nodes, the roof sections. So just be aware of the two differences. All right. Now you'll notice that in the 2D, you can change the pitch of the roof and the edge height. And that's the height from the ground to this edge line. This is an eve line. You can also make those changes in 3D if you like. I'll click on the 3D button here at the top, and here in 3D, you can click on each individual roof face, change the tilt as needed. Now just be aware that when you change the tilt of the roof face, you're only changing the one you click on. So you'll notice as I make one side steeper, the ridge is gonna have to move accordingly to make this shape. You know, pretty much I guess laws of geometry, right? If you make one side steeper, the other side needs to get larger to account for that. Now, if you want to change all of the tilt values of this roof all at the same time, just check the apply to all faces. And then you can change them all at the same time instead of manually clicking on each roof face. Now, Aurora does provide you with additional features that help you figure out what the tilt of the roof is. It is only available for premium subscriptions. We have LiDAR and we have the Street View measurement tool. We don't go over that in the Smart Roof training. That's a topic for a different training. But yeah, if you're interested in learning more about getting the right tilt of the roof, just go ahead and search LiDAR or Street View measurement tool in the Help Center. It looks like I have a question from Micah. How do you draw an A-frame? That's a really good question. And how could you change the orientation of the slope you were just editing? Those are both great questions. I'm actually going to go ahead and show you an A-frame on the third project, one after this. And as for changing the orientation of the slope, I'm assuming the azimuth, that's something that you can't change, but I'll go ahead and I'll explain it on the next project on how that works. So this is a simple hipped roof. Let's go ahead and move on to the next project. Now, let me just jump in the slides and make sure I showed you all the modeling best practices. We went over activating the smart roof, showing you the menu here at the top, pitched and flat. I showed you what to do to make when you make a mistake. I showed you the edit mode, or what I also can call it the draw mode, edit mode. And when you're outside of the edit mode, you can rotate the structure, you can move, copy, and paste the structure. So let's go ahead and go back to the app, and we're going to go to the next project. So this is going to help answer, I guess, how do you set the orientation of the slope? So here we have another hipped roof. And the way the Smart Roof tool works is every time you draw a line, the software is going to give you a roof face that's perpendicular to that line. So for example, I went ahead and I'm going to turn off the image. I went ahead and I drew 4 lines. I'm going to get 4 roof faces. And you'll notice that the azimuth of each section is perpendicular to the line that I drew. If I draw 6 lines, I'll get 6 roof faces. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are 6 lines that I drew. I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 roof faces. So if you're ever in a situation where you're missing a roof face in your drawing, like you're looking at the image of the home, you're like, there should be another roof face right here. Why don't I have it? There's a good chance that you didn't draw an edge line. The software will not be able to create a roof face unless there is an edge line. And as you can see, if you want a south roof face, you need to draw a line that's somewhat horizontal. If you want an east or west roof face, you need to draw one that's a little more vertical. So let's go ahead and go back to the structure here. Let's go ahead and outline it. You'll notice that it's really important to draw every little edge line because, for example, this edge line that I drew is going to give me this north face. It's important to draw this little edge line because this is going to give me this sliver of a west face. Same with this little edge line. It's going to give me this really narrow south face. There you go. Now, another question you may have is how does Aurora calculate these dotted lines? And you'll notice that by default, all of our initial structures are going to be hipped structures. So that means you're always going to get these hip lines, these valley lines, and the ridges. It's never going to be an A-frame by default. And the reason for that is what the smart roof is doing is it's going to project a plane from this edge line that you drew, and it's going to project it out at 20 degrees, which is why you'll notice that all of our initial homes, the default tilt is 20 degrees. Now, anytime two or more planes meet or intersect, you're going to get a dotted line. And that's how these hips, ridges, and valleys are created initially. Now later on, I'm going to show you some advanced features so that when you change the tilt, you'll notice that the dotted lines will shift accordingly. Now the other thing I want to mention, not only are the default tilts all 20 degrees, but that line that you drew, that eve line, it's defaulted to 9.8 feet. And that's the height, not the length. So what I mean is it's going to be 9.8 feet from the ground, this plane, to that eve line that you drew. In some more complicated homes, and I'll show you in examples moving forward, you may have to adjust that height. Excuse me. You may have to adjust that height to make these interior edge lines look correct. Last but not least, do make sure to draw everything in 90-degree angles as best as you can. You'll notice that there might be some differences that gets created if, for example, you don't line things up correctly. So, for example, if you just stare at these dotted lines, if I place this line here in line with this one here, you can see it creates this symmetric shape where the valleys are equal. And by the valleys, I'm talking about this dotted line and this dotted line. And if I shift it so they're unequal, you'll notice it creates a different feature where the valley lengths are different. And then you can see this north face kind of shoots up a little bit. Some homes, this is what you want. Other homes, it's not. So just be aware that if you misalign some of these eaves, you can create these features or make it symmetric. So that's pretty much it for this home. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go into the 3D view, show you what it looks like. You'll notice that I'm always going to turn off the Google image, or in this case, I'm using a near map image. Now that is one thing I am sorry I failed to mention. I showed you the street view and the map view. I always recommend changing out the images, just seeing which one's better. So a lot of times you'll get, let's say, this Google image, which is great. Sometimes Google's no good. It's skewed, it's blurry. You may want to click on the drop-down menu, switch it to Bing. Sometimes Bing imagery is better. If not, if Google and Bing both don't work, you can upload your own image. You can upload roof plans, drone shots, image from a different provider. We also have been integrated with Near Maps. If you purchase credits from us, you can access Near Map imagery, which is just high definition imagery, easier to see the vents. And they usually are not skewed. Let's go ahead and let me just double check my slides. The next slide, we're going to talk about A-frames. And we're going to use this feature called pitch and unpitch. And this is how you're going to draw your A-frames. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the next project. A-frame gabled roof. Pretty much it's a roof where the ridge runs all the way across. So here's a very simple one. So what we're going to do is, you can always check your images, street view, map view, check whether you want to use Google, maybe you want to use Bing. And when you're ready, you'll click on Smart Roof. You'll notice the menu. You'll notice that pitch roof is selected. So let's go ahead and now left click to drop a node. And we're going to go ahead and outline the roof. Now, it's really important not to leave a node at the midpoints. So a rule of thumb when you're using the Smart Roof, anytime you drop a node, you need to draw the next line at a 90-degree angle from the original line. So once I drop this node, I either have to go down or I need to go up. I do not want to go in the same direction. If this is something that you end up doing, like you go in the same direction, all that means is that middle node that you first placed, it is not needed, and you should get rid of it. So I'm going to go from corner to corner, and every time I place a node, I always go 90 degrees from that first line. Now, once you close it off, as I mentioned earlier, you are going to get a hipped roof. This is just how the Smart Roof tool defaults the structure. You're now going to click on roof faces that do not exist or aren't supposed to be there, like this north triangle. I'll click on it, and in this little modal that pops up, I'm going to select unpitch. When you unpitch a roof, you're taking that 20-degree sloped roof and you're turning it into a 90-degree wall. From the top-down view, what it looks like is the roof disappears. So let's do that for the south face, unpitch. Now, if you make a mistake and you don't want to unpitch, just go ahead and click on the line where the roof section, got deleted or removed, and just click on Make Pitched, and you can get the roof section back. So unpitch, make pitch. You'll notice that moving forward, what I'll do is I'll use a shortcut. I'll click on my roof face that I don't want, and I'll just hit delete on my keyboard, and that gets rid of the roof face. So that's just a quick way of unpitching. So this is what your A-frame roof will look like so. Folds and dormers. Let's go ahead and move on to the next project here. It looks like the next one, before we do folds and dormers, let me just show you how to do a flat roof really quickly. It's really simple. All you do is when you click on the Smart Roof tool, just remember to switch to flat and then start your outline. When you have a flat roof selected, what you'll notice is that interior edge lines will not be created. So just no interior lines, no ridges, no valleys, no hips. It's just a flat roof. Now you will notice there is an azimuth, even on a flat roof. Now, on a flat roof, the pitch is 0 degrees. So, this azimuth, there isn't a real azimuth. So what this is actually used for is the default direction your panels are going to face. If you put panels on this roof, on a flat roof, and you tilt those panels, the default direction that they tilt towards is, in this case, southwest. Now, if you wanted your panels to tilt a different direction, what you'll do is you'll rotate those panels. So this is the default direction they'll point, and then you can rotate them, 90 degrees so that they face to the west direction, or negative 90 degrees so they face the east direction. But you cannot change the azimuth arrow here on a flat roof, or at least not using this feature. Now, really quickly, what if you forget, you might be in a rush, you forget to switch it to flat roof and you draw a pitched roof. So, you go through here and you can see that this roof is has a lot of edge lines, right? So what you'll get is a bunch of these roof faces. You have two options. You can delete what you have and start again and make sure to select flat roof, or you can convert pitched roofs into flat roofs and vice versa. Let me go ahead and show you how. No matter which option you select, you need to exit this draw edit mode. So you'll notice right here, there's a menu at the top. I'm currently in the draw edit mode. I can click on each individual item. I need to exit that. So I can either hit escape or I can double left click anywhere outside of this structure. That's going to help me exit the mode. You'll notice the menu is gone when you exit the mode. Now, if you want to delete the structure, you would just click on it. So you highlight the entire structure, hit delete on your keyboard. So that's going to be the delete option, start again. Or another option is to right click the structure. When you right click the structure, you'll get a roof properties box. And in this properties box, you have an option to make it flat. So you can convert a pitched roof into a flat roof or vice versa, flat roof into a pitched roof. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next project, which is going to be dormers. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use our dormer tool. There's actually three options, all for different um, examples. So you'll notice that, for example, for this home, the Google image is not very clear. It's also kind of skewed. You're kind of looking at it from an angle. You'll notice that if you switch it to Bing, it's a good top-down image, but it's really blurry. But if you switch it to near maps, you can see a little more clearly defined ridge, so on and so forth. Now, let me go ahead and show you Street View. The first dormer we're going to draw is this one right here. It's called a shed dormer, a dormer with one roof slope. What I may also need to do is click on the map view at the top and swivel around to take a look at what the structure looks like. So you can see this is a fairly simple, almost A-frame-like, right? There's a large south face, there's a large north face, though the north face is kind of cut up in the corner, and there's a shed dormer on the south face. So let's go ahead and draw that. Click on Smart Roof. I'm going to go ahead and outline this roof. Make sure that my angles snap to 90 degrees. And when I'm done, because I drew 6 lines, 6 edge lines, I'm going to get 6 roof faces. But I don't need them all. I only need 2. I need a south face and I need a north face. So let's go ahead and click on this west side and I'm going to hit unpitch. Click on the east side, unpitch. Click on this west narrow slice of roof, unpitch. So now I have a south face, but I have 2 north faces, and I only really need 1. So let's go ahead and unpitch one of them. And now here I am. I'm left with a north face and a south face with a ridge that runs right down the middle. I'm going to then move up to the top, cursor to the top, select my dormer that I want, click on the option, move my cursor over here to the roof, and for a shed dormer, it's pretty easy. Click to place, then adjust the size. And that's it. Let's take a look at what this looks like in 3D. Now, once again, please remember to change the tilt of the roof. It's defaulted to 20 degrees. You can make this steeper, for example. You can also change the tilt of the dormer. By default, it's 10 degrees. For a shed dormer, you can make it steeper, for example. I'm going to open up the street view, and you can see this is a pretty close replica. All right, let's go ahead and move to the other dormers. Now, we're going to work on this home right down here across the street. It actually has both a hip dormer and a gable dormer, the other 2 options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to show you a cool little trick. Click on details, select the project location. I kind of want my little green tile back. And watch this, right? When I click on street view, it's actually always going to center to this little green tile, right? So I put it on this home. See, my street view is always going to center to that. What if I move the screen tile to the other side, other home? You'll notice my street view jumps accordingly. Perfect. That's just a little trick you can use. It's called project location. All right. So here's a hipped roof. I don't know if you guys can see it really well, but pretty much it's a dormer, or sorry, hipped dormer. This is a dormer with 3 sections. Usually there's like a little triangle section at the front, and then there's 2 sides. The other dormer is a gable dormer, and that's a dormer with just the 2 sides. Let's go ahead and draw those in. First, I'm going to click on Smartroof and outline the building. So this is a fairly simple building. There we go. Second, I'm going to click on the dormer button at the top. Let's start with the hipped dormer. Left click. Move your cursor over to the roof, and you'll notice your cursor is attached to this little, the ridge one, the one on the node on the ridge. So we're just going to go ahead and place that down. Left click. Then you're going to go ahead and move the far node, and you'll notice that if you move the far end, the other end, the node, it doesn't matter which one, top, bottom, makes no difference. These nodes you can use to resize the dormer. It gives you the ability to move in 2 directions, the X and the Y. So you can go ahead and resize it. And last but not least, you're going to go ahead and slide the middle node over here. Doesn't matter if you use the top or the bottom, but these can only slide, so they only move in 1 direction. So you do that last. And that's it. 3 simple steps. Let's just do that again with the gabled option. You're going to select the gable dormer. Step 1, place it down. Step 2, resize the dormer using the far node. Step 3, slide the middle node in place. And then you're done. With dormers, it's pretty cool. If you find that there are multiple dormers of the same shape, you don't have to keep on resizing them. Just copy and paste. Select the dormer you want to copy, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. To delete dormers, just click on the dormer so that it's highlighted and hit delete. Now make sure that when you're trying to edit and modify the dormers, make sure you are in the edit mode. There should be a menu up here. If you exit the edit mode and try and click on a dormer, you'll notice that you can't. You'll end up clicking on the entire roof section. So just be aware to enter the edit mode, click on the structure, click on the little pencil button, and now you can go in and modify the dormers again. All right, so that's it for the dormers. Let me just make sure if there's any questions. I know some of you joined in maybe a little after we started. Everyone is muted, so if you have any questions, please just type it in the chat box, and I'll answer them the moment I see it. That's a good question, Samir. Setbacks. I have setbacks saved in my account under jurisdictions, so you'll see that a lot of times when I create my structures, they'll automatically appear. So if you go into your account settings, it's called jurisdictions, you can save setbacks. I believe I have it saved for a couple of states like California, New York, etc. Let's go ahead and do the folds. The first fold we're going to do is called a flat fold. And all a flat fold does is it gives you a flat top. So a lot of times when you draw a roof, you get a ridge at the very top. But in some cases, usually with commercial buildings, but in some cases residential as well. So for example, you can see that at the top of this roof, it's not a ridge, it's a flat square. So how would we draw that in? Well, first you're going to outline the roof. You're going to click on Smart Roof, and you're going to go ahead and outline this. So we go around. It's a fairly simple home, so I'm just going to go ahead and outline this. Done. And you'll notice that my lines line up fairly well. All of the hips, valleys, and ridges, perfect, except for this top area. There isn't a ridge, and the hips don't go all the way to the top. It's flat. So what I'll do is I'll move up here to the top option, flat fold. Click on it, move your cursor over, And you can see it creates that flat top that I want. You can make it as big as you want or as little as you want. But when you're ready, you just click. Now, if you make a mistake and you want to readjust the fold, just click on the purple marker. Click and drag, and you can readjust it. All right. If you want to get rid of this fold, you can always hit the delete button after you click on the purple marker. You can delete the fold. But let's go ahead and put it back. Last but not least, for the flat fold, you actually can control the direction where the tilt is. You just put the little purple marker on the side that you want your arrow pointed towards. And once again, this azimuth arrow is only used for the default direction of your panels. And that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and go to 3D and take a look at what this does. That's a really good question, Micah. You can't show the irradiance in the 3D mode as of right now. We're actually releasing an update to our CAD software in roughly a month or so where you can. But if you want to show the irradiance map, you got to be in System Design 2D, and then you see the irradiance map. But yeah, look forward to our update because in a month you'll get to see the irradiance in 3D, which I think is really cool. Let's go ahead and jump to the next fold we're going to do. It's called a pitched fold. Whoops, that's not what I want. Sorry about that. You'll notice we also released a new feature. Sorry, I didn't explain this. Aurora does have a design service, 3D modeling service to be exact, where we can create the 2D drawing and the 3D model for you. You do have to purchase tokens to use that. I can explain a little bit more about that feature at the end. But yeah, if you're interested, let me know. We've just released it to a small group of our clients for testing purposes. And if you want to be a tester, you want to receive some free credits, try it out. I'm glad to send you some. All right, pitched folds. So a pitched fold is used when the pitch changes. So for example, let's take a look at this garage, maybe barn type structure. You'll see that in this particular roof, it's this one right here, it's sloped, and not so steep of a slope, and then it goes really steep, and then it goes not so steep again. So these are pitch changes. And then we're going to go ahead and use the pitched fold for that. So let's go ahead and show you how to do it. Step 1, draw the roof, Smartroof. Go ahead and outline this. Step 2, well, in this one, I got to get rid of these roof sections because it's a gable, the ridge runs across. And then all you're going to do is move up here to the menu, pitched fold, and place them down. Now, when you place a fold down, one of the things you'll notice is that the ridge moves, and I'll show you why the ridge moves. Now, don't be worried about it. The ridge moves because by default, the section, the pitched is like this, where the first section's 45 degrees and the other section's 20 degrees. So when you do something like that, the ridge has to move. But when you change the pitch to the right value, you'll see that the ridge can indeed move back, right, when you start changing the tilt. So don't worry that the ridge moves. And you'll also notice that here in 2D, if I add another fold on the other side, kind of evens it out. So I'm going to add 2 pitched folds to either side. You can, of course, adjust it by moving the dotted lines. Now, one are the purple markers, but we're going to go ahead and set the tilts of all of these sections. And remember from Street View, you saw that at the very top, it wasn't very steep. So let's go ahead and right-click this section, and I'm going to switch it to 18 degrees. I'm going to do it for the left side of the ridge and the right side of the ridge. Then the next strip is steep. Let's make it 55 degrees. And finally, the last strip of roof space, roof section. It's not so steep as 55. Let's just make it 23. And we're going to go ahead and try and adjust this to even everything out a little bit. All right, so what does this look like in 3D? I've just set all of the tilts of all these different roof sections, and that's what I get. 18 at the top, 55, and then 23. That's fairly close to what we see here. It looks like I have another question. PTS file or equivalent. To be honest, I'm not very familiar with that file, but um, the answer, unfortunately, is probably going to be no. Um, the only files you can upload are image files, JPEG, and PNGs. So if there isn't LiDAR available, um, I recommend checking out our Street View measurement tool. If there is Google Street View available in the location, you can actually use our tool to take a measurement of what is the tilt of this roof section, what is the tilt of this roof section, or this one. Just go ahead and do a quick search in our Help Center Street View measurement tool, and it'll give you a step-by-step on how to do that. Our last fold is called a vertical fold. And this one's used mostly for Dutch gable type structures. And what you'll see is it's a structure that looks something like this, where it's very similar to a standard hipped roof, except if you look at the hip lines, it kind of goes up halfway and then it stops. And then it becomes like a side, like a rake, and it goes straight to the ridge instead of continuously going up at an angle. What that creates is this kind of a triangular, like vertical wall piece. So this is how we would do it here in Aurora. Click on Smart Roof, outline your building, and you'll see once again the hips go all the way up to the ridge. Well, we're going to click on the vertical fold and just go ahead and throw it in here. And that's going to make it so that the hip lines goes up halfway, stops, and then it comes straight across. In 3D, what you've done is you've created this little triangular piece, this vertical fold. That's pretty much all the folds. Let me go back to the slide to quickly, I showed you the flat fold, pitched fold, and vertical fold. I've also showed you all three dormer types, shed, gable, and hipped. I got a question from Samira. Can folds can be horizontal or perpendicular to an eave line? Not too sure if I understand the question, but I can show you another use case for the vertical fold. Yes, correct. They are going to be. You'll notice that when you enter these folds, they are going to either be parallel to some sort of edge line or perpendicular. Correct. You're correct. Another use case for the vertical fold is not too sure. I know the name of this type of structure, but sometimes you have like a west face that's a little taller. They don't meet at the ridge. Like for example, this southeast face actually meets lower than the ridge. So let me go and show you. If I add in a vertical fold, like right here, go into the 3D. This is what I mean. So I'm sure you know some of you have seen something like this where there's like windows here. Is it maybe like Sistine or something like that? Yeah, you can use the vertical fold for this. Let's go ahead and move to the next project. And another question from Micah, if Street View images are not good enough, can you use uploaded images? You can. I don't recommend it though. When you upload an image, you do have to scale the image correctly. And the great thing about Google Street View is that if you use Google Street View and Google Top Down, um, we have all of the information on distances. So, for example, let me go back in here. If I were to use the Street View measurement tool to measure this roof face, the software knows that in Street View, I'm right here in the middle of the street. It's going to be able to calculate the distance from this camera to this roof. And then when you start placing your points, it's going to be able to triangulate what the tilt is based off the distance from the camera view. If you upload your own image, um, Street View still needs to be available. And it's really important that you scale your image correctly and place it in the right spot. So it's going to make it a lot more difficult to do it that way. I do recommend using Street View, Google Street View. Let's go ahead and move to the next one. So now we're going to go into um, a little more complicated of a roof. And what I'm going to start showing you is, instead of outlining the entire roof, we can use features like the dormer tool that you saw earlier to make your designs easier. So what do I mean by that? Here we have a roof, a standard roof with some extensions. And if you look at the extensions and you just kind of ignore the size of them, you'll notice they look very much like a dormer. And in this case, it looks like a hipped dormer. So I'm going to go ahead and use the hip dormer to help me draw these two sections in. I'll click on the Smart Roof tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ignore these two sections for now. I'm going to draw the roof as if they were not there. So if those extensions were not there, all the home is going to look like is this A-frame, gabled roof, unpitch, unpitch, and that's it. Now let's go ahead and draw the extensions in. I'm going to click on the hip dormer, 3 steps. Click once to put the anchor node, resize the dormer, slide these center nodes in. Let's try that again. Hip dormer, step 1, click. Step 2, resize. Step 3, slide these in. And then you're done. So what we can do is by drawing this roof in sections and using something like a dormer tool, you can make this home easier to draw. Now, let's try that again on the neighboring home. You'll notice that if you look just a little bit, this looks like a gabled dormer right here, jutting out to the east. And if you kind of ignore that piece and you look at this piece up here, that could actually the shape of it could be a gabled dormer jutting north. So why don't we first just draw this piece here? It's a nice simple A-frame, ignoring the other, more complicated pieces. So let's make it an A-frame. We'll unpitch. Then we'll click the gable dormer option and draw the first. And then we're going to draw the second. Now, one thing you'll notice is that you can't put dormers on dormers. You'll get an error message. So this is when you want to turn a dormer into a roof. The way you do that is just right-click the dormer, convert it to a roof. Now, once you converted this piece to a roof, let's go into the edit mode of this section and add a dormer going this way. Done. Once again, to convert a dormer into a roof, right-click the dormer, convert to roof. You do have to be in the edit mode. Now, you'll notice 2 things. One, you can't put dormers on dormers, so that's one reason why you want to convert it to a roof. The other thing you'll notice is that dormers by default don't have setbacks, right? You'll notice this one doesn't have setbacks, this one doesn't have setbacks. If you click on settings, you can always check the box for dormers, and then they'll have setbacks. Now, another reason why you want to convert a dormer into the roof is right over here. Let me go and show you in 3D. So you can see my 2 structures. Now they looked a little more complicated, and then I made it really simple. Drew it in sections, one piece, one piece, one piece. Now, take a look at this. If I raise the height of this building and make it taller, you'll notice that a dormer will always sit on top of this roof. So the dormer will move with your structure. If you converted the dormer into its own roof section, you'll notice that it will not move. So in other words, you have the ability to change the heights of these two pieces independent from each other. And why would you want to do that? Well, in some cases, a roof might look like this, where your garage, the ridge line doesn't meet um, the eave of the other structure, right? So there might be a height difference. One section's 1 story tall, the other section's 2 story tall. So it gives you more flexibility to adjust. You also notice that the valley lines will automatically uh, get created as you move these, as you change the height. The software will know where the valleys need to be. And this brings us to something what we call merging of roofs. If you were to draw separate roof sections, to merge them together is really simple. All you do is you move a structure and you just drag it over to another structure and let it go. And they will automatically merge. And once again, depending on the height of your buildings, that will determine where these valleys are. So all I'm doing is clicking, dragging a roof section, putting it onto the other roof, letting it go, and they'll merge together. So let's go ahead and move to the next project. And with this in mind, you'll notice that the most complicated roofs can be made very simple by using one of the two methods I just showed you, either merging roofs together or using the dormer tool. So this is a home in Texas. I'm using the near map imagery. So for complicated roofs like this, by default, you might be tempted to just outline the entire thing and think that that's all you need to do, right? Let me just outline this, and then what's going to end up happening is you're missing edge lines. Something weird's going on. You're going to start unpitching stuff, and it's still not going to look right. And the reason why it's not going to work, or I guess in this case, it's not going to work. Um, if you take a look at just this left side here, it's not going to work because you're asking this single line, which is only going to give you one roof face. Remember, each edge line is going to give you one roof face. You're asking this edge line to be 3 different things. You're going to ask this line to be a west face, this west face. You're asking this line to be non-existent. Here, it's going to have to be unpitched, so you can have a gabled structure, an A-frame. And then down here, you're asking it to be a west face again, but this time for this dormer. You're asking it to be 3 different things, and that's not going to work well for you. If you wanted to draw this all in one piece, you would need to have drawn three of these lines, so that this piece here can be this west face, this piece in the middle can be unpitched, and then this piece down here can be a west face. So you'd have to do it like that. That gets really complicated. So let's make it a little easier. Once again, I notice a lot of the features on this home look very similar to dormers. A hip dormer, it's just a very large one. So why don't we draw the main portion of the home? It's a simple A-frame. Unpitch the sides, and we get the ridge that runs across. Then we're going to go up here, click on a hipped dormer, and just resize it into place. Done. That's the top. The bottom, the garage. Well, that's a gable dormer. Resize it into place. There's more dormers here, so I mean, we can just quickly, these are like actual dormers, I guess. Just throw them in. And done. So, we made something really complicated and difficult, and we make it a lot easier just by breaking it into sections. Now, the dormer tool, you'll notice, only works if these pieces are symmetric. What if they're not symmetric? Well, if they're not symmetric, I do recommend merging roofs, and let's go ahead and do the same thing, but merge roof faces together. So it's gonna be the same thing. I draw the first piece, it's the gabled section. Now watch as I exit the edit mode, the draw mode, I click on Smart Roof again. Now I'm gonna draw a second piece. This second piece is gonna encompass this top portion. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna outline the top portion as a box. I try and make everything boxes, nice rectangular boxes, nice and simple. Now, this top section that I drew with a hip dormer on the other version, it has a north face, it has an east face, it has a west face, but it doesn't have a south face. So let's go ahead and unpitch it. So now we get that ridge. And now I'm going to exit the edit mode and let the two pieces merge together. So once again, this is what I drew as my second structure. Put it together and they'll merge together. Let's do it for the garage. Here, I'll show you what I'm doing. All I'm doing is drawing a box. The garage has a west face and an east face, so let's go ahead and get rid of the north and south. Exit the edit mode, click and drag, drop it in place. May have to resize this a little bit, but there you go. You can see that the software knows that part of this box is underneath the south face. So you see the dotted lines, they're going to be hidden. So when you go into 3D, you can see that the software knows that it is a box, right? A rectangle, a gabled structure, A-frame. And when you start changing the height of it, it will give you exactly what you're looking for. It's kind of dormer tool. So either method works, right? I think the dormer template is a lot easier to use, but for something that's not symmetric, when the structure is not symmetric, you do want to just go ahead and draw more smart roof drawings and kind of just piece them together. And then using these two methods, you can draw pretty much any complicated roof. You just simplify it. Play Legos, put them together. Let's go ahead and show you a few other roofs. Now, at the end of this workshop, I'm going to try and save some time for you guys. If you guys have difficult addresses you wanted to see done live, I'm happy to take requests and take a look at some of the addresses you guys are working on. Now, this one right here is called a split roof. And what a split roof is something where take a look at this home here. These are south faces, and you can see that there's a large one, and then there's a garage, which is another south face, but it's broken apart by this wall. And the garage is a little bit lower, or I guess pushed back than the main roof. So that's what I call a split. You'll notice on the back of the house, there's a split there. And on the side of the house, there's another split. So split roofs, pretty easy. You click on Smart Roof, go ahead and outline it. It's really important to draw these little edge lines. And to simplify this home, I noticed that the front has, where the door is, has this dormer looking structure. So let's ignore it. Pretend it's not there. Just draw the roof as if it did not exist, because I can always use the dormer tool to add it in. Now, all you need to do for split roofs is go in, start unpitching roof sections. When you unpitch some of these roof sections, you'll notice they will create a split for you. Right here, right here, right here, and right there. And then dormer, cable dormer, resize it. Let's go into 3D. And there you go. So here's that break that we saw between the garage and the main home. Back of the house, we have another break, or another split on the side as well. And that's it. Yeah, if you have a circular tower somewhere at the end of this, I'm happy to take a look at it. We don't actually draw perfectly circular towers. What we do is we'll just break it apart into like kind of like an octagon or a shape type. Yeah, I can show you how. Skewed imagery. So what's great about the Smart Roof tool is that it counts for skewing of the image. Let me just switch to Google. So let's just quickly, to save time, I'm just going to draw the main roof side. But you can tell the image is skewed, and the way you can tell is you can actually see the windows on the walls. So, like if you imagine yourself floating above a home, looking straight down, orthogonal to the ground, you shouldn't be able to see any windows. You should only be able to see the roof. And so I know that this image is slanted. I'm looking at it from the right-hand side at an angle. That's why I can see all of the windows on the east face and also on the south face. And what that's actually going to do, because you're looking at this home at an angle, is that it's going to make all the south and east faces look bigger than they actually appear. And it's going to make all of the west and north faces look smaller than they actually appear. So if you were to try to trace this out, putting the ridge line right where you see it, you're actually not creating an accurate 3D model. You're actually accounting for more surface area on this east face and too little surface area on the west face, and that's no good. You're going to come get to this house and you realize that your design's not going to fit. So what's great about the Smart Roof tool is that the software accounts for skewing if you make sure to snap these angles to 90 degrees. Software is going to place this ridge in the symmetric center. Now, I do have to unpitch some of these roof sections away because I actually don't need all of these roof sections. Yeah, I don't need all of these. There should only be two faces, a west and an east. So here's the dotted ridge line. So the software is saying that if the ridge is here, it will make the vertical distance from the ridge to this eave equal the vertical distance from the ridge to this eave. And this is the point of symmetry. So you might be tempted to want to drag this dotted line around, but I would just make sure to, if the two sides are supposed to be equal in distance from ridge to eave, this is where the ridge needs to be. And let's go ahead and take a look at this in 3D. So it should look something like this. Now, the best option would be to just get unskewed imagery, like near maps. So if you look at near map, you can see that we're pretty spot on. Actually, it didn't draw it big enough. It should be a little bigger, but you can see the ridge is pretty spot on to the ridge that we see in near maps. It's where the chimney is. Might be actually difficult to see in this case, but yeah, it's where the chimney is. All right. Now, there's one last thing I want to show you guys, and that's to figure out how to change all of these dotted lines. So we're going to go with something extremely complicated. This is one of the most complicated roofs you'll probably see, hopefully. And you're going to go ahead and look at street view and map view to go around. And when I design a home like this, the first thing I'm trying to figure out is, hey, what are the things I can ignore because I'm going to use a dormer tool, right? Or what can I ignore to draw separately? Like for example, this weird little half cone thing. I don't want to include that in my main drawing. I'm going to draw it in separately. So let's ignore that for now. I notice that there's a lower level here that's kind of separate from this upper level. Let's draw that separately, right? You notice that I can change the heights of two different structures. So I can make this piece 1 story tall, make the other larger piece 2 stories tall. So let's ignore this bottom piece. As you swivel around, you'll notice there are shed dormers. Let's ignore that. We can use the shed dormer tool to draw it in afterwards. You'll notice things like dormers, gable dormers. Ignore those. We'll use the dormer tool to add those in. Now, you might be tempted to use the dormer tool over here. You can. I'm not going to, only because you'll notice one side of the dormer kind of shoots up all the way to the ridge, so it's not really a symmetric dormer. And if you want that kind of feature in there, you don't want to use the dormer tool. So I'll draw that in as a part of my roof drawing. So you'll see, lower levels, dormers. All right, let's go ahead and outline this roof. So once again, shed dormer, ignore it. You'll notice there's a lower level here, ignore that. I'm going to ignore this piece here, draw it in separately. Ignore the lower level, draw that in separately. I notice that there is a shed dormer here, so we'll use the shed dormer tool. Whoops, I didn't snap that really well, so once I'm done, I'm going to go in here. Let's go ahead and fix these lines. I do want them all to be 90 degrees from each other. All right, so that's what we're going to get. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that the dotted lines don't line up. And I'm sure you guys have seen the same thing in your designs. And the first reaction you're going to do is, let's say over here, you're going to want to click this dotted line and you want to drag it over. And you'll notice it's never going to work. It's never going to line up no matter how many times you click and drag. You almost want to bend this dotted line, kind of angle it or something like that. Well, let me show you what's happening when you click and drag these dotted lines. As I mentioned earlier, all of the heights of these eaves that you drew are 9.8 feet. When you click and drag these dotted lines, you're not changing the tilt of the roof. What you're doing is you're changing the heights of these eave lines. You've just now made this side 11.5 feet tall and this side 9.5. You actually don't have a lot of control over what changes, but when you're clicking and dragging, that is what you're doing. You're changing the heights of the various eave lines. And you don't really want to do that. I do not recommend clicking and dragging the dotted lines unless you need to make a very minor change. What I recommend doing instead is changing two inputs. Either change the pitch of the roof or manually change the height of the eave one at a time. Now, let me change the tilt of the roof first, because if you ever see your dotted lines not parallel or on top of the image lines, there's a good chance that the tilt is incorrect. And if you look at the map view, you can see that this is actually a pretty steep home, relatively. So first step, let me just make all the roof faces 30 degrees as a starting point instead of 20 degrees. I want to start off a little steeper. You'll notice if you make all of the roof tilts 30 degrees, nothing changes. The dotted lines don't change. But let's go ahead and start with this one. And I'm just going to make this one roof face change in pitch. Everything else is 30 degrees. I'm only changing this one. And what I'm looking at mostly is this long ridge line. And you'll notice as I'm making it steeper, it actually starts falling into place really well. So what that probably tells me is that there's two different pitches on this roof. And of course I can use LiDAR or street view measurements to confirm. That might be easier. But let's say you don't have that available. There's right away you know there is a pitch difference. And for homes in Texas, what you'll tend to find is the north and the south might be one tilt value, and the east and the west might be a different tilt value. So now that I know that this one roof section is 47 degrees or close to it, maybe let's change the other west faces to 47, like this one. And you'll see that when I did that, the hip line matches really well. So what about the east side? If one side's 47, usually the opposite side's also 47. So let's go ahead and do that. Look how much nicer it looks. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly go through all of these roof sections, and I'm going to change the west and the east to the steeper value. And as I do that, you'll notice that the edge lines, these dotted lines, the hips and valleys, are now lining up a lot better. So that's number one that I would recommend doing. And here's another cool thing I can show you again. You can see that this dormer shoots up kind of all the way to the ridge. And if you remember correctly, when I showed you earlier, you can drag these lines so that this edge line is not in line with this one. And you can actually create that type of feature where it shoots up all the way to the top. Just make sure they're not lined up. Now, so the pitch is one. The other one, as I mentioned, is the height of the eave. And let me go ahead and show you how to modify that. And once you get these two complicated things down, no, the most difficult roof should be doable. To help me show you that, I'm going to once again open up my map view. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to annotate for you guys. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to look at these two eave lines, eave number one, eave number two. And to help you see where that is on my right-hand side, this is eve number one, and this is eve number two, right? Those are the same lines. Now, from the left-hand image, you can see eve number one in terms of elevation, in terms of height from the ground. Number one is shorter than number two. We're not talking about the length, we're talking about the height. So from the ground to that line, you can see clearly that number two is kind of above number one. Well, in my drawing, by default, all of the eaves are set to 9.8 feet. They are the same. So here's another thing that we can do to make these complicated drawings line up a little better. Sorry, let me move that image. Okay, so we said, I'm gonna go into the edit mode of this structure. So I can now edit it, and sorry, the lines are, let me just erase them. So we said that number two, which is this line here, should be taller than number one. So let's go ahead and make it a little taller. And as I make it taller, you can see that the valley can no longer intersect at that corner. So before, they were both roughly the same height. So the dotted line, which is the valley, intersects the corner. But you can see that as I make one end taller, the valley now will intersect right here. So I can actually do two things. I can make one side taller, or I can make the other side shorter. Right? Both do the same thing. So let's go ahead and look at this corner. So right now this eave is 8 feet tall. This one though is 9.8. And that's why the dotted line is stopped right here. But if I make them both 8 feet tall, they meet in the corner. And you can see that once I do that, the last little bit of these, ridge, hip, and valley lines, they kind of shift into place. And that's pretty much it. And then, to finish this off, you just throw in your dormers in all the locations that, as we said earlier, there were some. Over here, we said we were going to draw that separately, so we can always click on the Smart Roof tool. We can draw this piece here. And I'm going to lift this entire big piece to like 2 stories. And of course, if you notice that the hips and valleys don't line up, it's most likely because the pitch values are not set correctly. There you go. For this weird shaped roof, there's 2 options. You can kind of just use a dormer template to kind of put in place so it's relatively this shape. Or if you really want that the look of it, you would have to click on Smart Roof. You would have to kind of draw this in. I'm trying to speed this up here a little bit, but it looks something like this. And let me just change all of the tilts to 45. We may need to make this a little taller. All right, let's go into the 3D view. All right, so something like this. And I didn't make this big piece too tall, so I'll probably lower it a little bit so that this ridge lines up to that. And that's pretty much it. All right, let's just go ahead and jump into your examples. Do you guys have any questions about this? So pretty much for modifying the interior edge lines, I recommend doing the more basic steps, which is pitching and unpitching of roofs, maybe breaking the structure apart into bite-sized pieces. Now I drew this entire thing as one piece. Now you could probably break this down into like multiple pieces if it's a little easier. That might make it more manageable. Um, but I drew the majority of this kind of as like one outline. That's not required though. So I would always try and use some of the more basic hints first to draw a complicated roof. But if you really wanted this as one piece, um, you have to be mindful of the tilt of the roof. You have to be mindful of the height of the different eave lines. And once again, I would probably use LiDAR to help me with that, right? Because LiDAR actually tells you that easily that there's two different tilt values. One's less steep than the other. It looks like we have a couple of examples. So I'm going to start off with the Florida one. Is this the one? 313001 Upper Hardin Avenue. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. Map view. It looks like a new home. Street view. Let's move it a little closer to the street. Empty lot, so it's a new home. So unfortunately, let's see, we have Google, we have Bing. Bing shows empty lot. Near map shows, okay, near map shows the home. So I'm gonna have to decide whether I want to use the Google image, which is all right, or near map, which looks a lot nicer. Now, even though I don't have a street view or an angle view, I can clearly tell that there's one piece that's taller or above, it's this section right here, than the other sections. So I'm probably going to split it apart. And what I also notice is a shadow between this section and this one in the upper corner. So that could also mean a height difference. So maybe I split this drawing into three pieces: upper level, then lower level, and then the lowest level. Smart roof. Let's go ahead and just outline the top piece. Top piece is easy. It's going to line up really well, and it's a hipped roof. So there's nothing I need to do here. So that's the top piece. Now, bottom piece. This one's going to be a little harder. So I need this line. It's going to give me the south face, this triangle face. I need this line. Now I'm going to draw this tiny little line here. Why? Because I want this little sliver. And I'm going to go all the way to the end. Now this one gets a little tricky here. It's going to get tricky because I need to draw a small little line to create this south face, right? So just remember, anytime you draw a line, it'll give you that roof face. So that's going to be that. We'll go around and I'm tempted to close it off like this because I like to try and keep everything 90 degrees, but I noticed there's also this north face here. So let's just do something like this. There. So I get that north face because I drew in this line here. It looks like everything is lined up. I don't need this triangle piece. I need a ridge that runs across. So let's unpitch. So that looks good. Everything looks pretty good. Oh, the back of the home, it's pointing northeast. I don't need this big chunk of roof pointing northwest. So let's unpitch that. So that's great. So everything lines up except for here. Now, it's weird. The valleys don't really line up with the other valleys. And one of the things that is happening is that this section pointing to the northeast is probably at a different tilt. It's probably at a lower tilt, just judging by the angle of the valleys. Now, as you design more and more, it kind of becomes intuitive. Like if you imagine the, if you look at these ridges and valleys, or sorry, these ridges and eaves, um, if the valley's 45 degrees, it means that the tilt is the same on either side. When the valley's not 45-degree angle, it's probably because one's less steep than the other. So let's go ahead and lower the steepness of this. You can see that does get a little better. But another thing is the valley keeps meeting at this corner here. So let's use that other idea that we had about eaves being at different heights. You can tell that this eave is actually a little taller than the rest. And as you make it move, we can get this valley. So there, that lines up a lot better. As piece number two, that's actually, I think, for this home, the hardest piece. I'm gonna make this big, tall piece 2 stories tall. And then the last piece here is fairly easy. Smart roof. Let's go ahead and outline it. Um, there's only 2 directions, north, northwest, and northeast. So we'll get rid of everything else. Now they don't line up as well, so it's probably because the tilts are different. So if we make one tilt lower, there we go. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right, that's pretty much the house. Now, the only unfortunate thing is I do not know the tilt of the roof. I know one tilt's less than the other, so we may want to confirm that it is, 20 degrees and 13. Um, I don't think we have LiDAR for this location. So for this location, because it's a new home, if you can get the roof plans, it'd be great. You can double check what the tilts are. But for sure, some of these surfaces are less steep than the others. That's how you design something like this. I got another one here. Another one's from Florida. Let's see here. And please let me know if you guys have any questions as I'm going through these. Um, I'm assuming it's this one right here if you're talking about round roofs, circular roofs. I'll just move it. Street view. Do we have any street view? Unfortunately not. Oh, we do. You'll notice what I'm doing when I'm checking street view is I'm kind of moving it closer to the street. Sometimes um, homes have really long driveways, and I'll be moving the location closer to the street side to help the software, you know, figure out if there is street view or not. So street view tells me, this roof is not so steep, 2 stories, things like that. Maybe map view. We also have map view. You can tell that some sections are really tall, some sections are not so tall. And I will always break down my drawings between the two. I'll draw my tall roof sections. I'll draw my shorter roof sections. So Let's go ahead and start drawing. Let's see if there's HD imagery for this one, because it does, but unfortunately the trees are still in the way. All right, so let's go ahead and draw it. I mean, this one's just going to require a lot of smart roof drawings. I'm going to draw this piece here. Done. Exit the draw mode. Click on Smart Roof again. Draw the next roof section. Done. Exit the draw mode. And once again, you can exit the draw mode by hitting escape or double clicking anywhere outside of the structure. Then we move to the next one. This piece. Done. So I mean, this one's, we're just pretty much going to draw it in sections. Now here's the big piece. So let's try and keep this big piece as one. I'm going to ignore this square. I'm going to ignore this square because I already drew that in. Done. And then, you know what? I'm going to copy and paste this square, this square, right? We're going to make some of them taller. I'm just right clicking, making them taller, right? We unpitch this so the ridge runs across. This circular piece. Now, we can't draw a perfect circular piece, but here's how I would draw it. Click on Smart Roof and draw it with like many sides. The more sides you draw it with, the more circular it'll look. Now, I may want to try and space this out a little more evenly, but you kind of get the idea. Let's make this taller so we can actually see it. Yeah, I'll show you what that looks like in just a bit. And we just keep drawing these in piece by piece. So we take this complicated drawing and we're literally just drawing nice, simple rectangles for the most part. Some of these pieces are 2 stories tall. Some of these pieces are 1 story tall. And for the one on the 1 story tall, I'm going to make it simple. Just going to draw a nice big rectangle for it. And I already made that piece in the middle 2 stories tall, so it knows, what's on top, what's on bottom. All right, and then we just go into the 3D and take a look. So I didn't, I just made things 2 stories tall and 1 story tall or 3, but you may want to adjust it, right? Like this big building is definitely taller. And then I'll just adjust everything accordingly. So this might be too tall. And you may also want to go in here and change all the tilt values, but that's how I would design something like this. There's no way you can actually draw this if you outline the entire thing like a H type shape. You just draw it in pieces. Great. All right. Well, thank you everybody for staying. It looks like we are out of time. If you guys have any questions though, I'll try and stay for another minute or so. If you guys have any, thanks for joining the Smart Roof Draw Tool. Now, I do want to mention that we do have a 3D modeling service. If you're interested in having Aurora designers draw out your 2D and create these nice, beautiful 3D models for you, let me know. We're currently in our testing stages, and I can send you some free credits that you can use. You can either message me right now, let me know you're interested, and I'll write your name down, or if you want some time to think over this, you can always email support@aurorasolar.com. Just let us know that you want to try out the 3D modeling service. We're happy to send you 5 free credits to test it out. We're having actual Aurora designers draw this. I'm just a trainer here, so some of these complicated ones might be really difficult for me, but we have some great designers that can do, the most difficult complex homes. Great, guys. Well, also, please let us know if you have any feedback, if you have anything that you feel like we missed about the Smart Roof tool, please let us know. We want to add your feedback into our future training. If there are other topics you'd like to see in these workshops, let us know. We can try and get those topics added in the future as well. Just be aware that currently we have 3 workshops: the introductory one, the Smart Roof workshop that you're currently attending, and a proposal and financing one. Um, Feel free to sign up for all 3. You can also check back every once in a while. Aurora constantly updates their features, so there's always going to be more and more cool things to show you guys. So if you want to revisit these workshops a couple of weeks from now, or maybe like a month from now, there might be some changes, and I can show you those changes. Yep, map scope. I can definitely answer any questions. When you say map scope, are you talking about the size of it? Yeah, good question. Um, so this is Samir's question. Sometimes you have a large commercial site, right? Let's use this one for example, and you enlarge your image. So let's go back. Excuse me. Let me switch it to Google because Near Map doesn't enlarge automatically. If you use Near Maps, you have to pretty much purchase like a tile. But let's say you're doing this, you're enlarging this image. And for whatever reason, you want to see the boats, the river. Maybe it's a large commercial project. And what happens is if you save and you move to system designs, the image is going to reset to the original size. You don't see the boats and the rivers. The reason for that is the software, what it's going to look at, it's going to look at whether you utilized the expanded map or not. And if it feels that you didn't need all of this space to draw this in, it's going to default back down. So what I recommend is if you're going to expand your image and you want this image to stay this big, go ahead and draw something in the corner. I recommend just drawing a tiny little tree. Top corner, bottom corner. If you draw something in the corners, the software is going to realize that, hey, you got something there. It's going to maintain this size. Save. Let's go to system design. And if I turn on the image, it's gonna be big rather than smaller. So just draw something in the corners, and you can keep the Google image enlarged. You don't have to draw trees. If you have buildings, you can draw buildings, but trees are just easy.